Cure Duchenne's virtual program where it was created by my lovely and wonderful coworker and friend Cheryl Morazzo, where we try to answer questions, concerns, and hot topics that are happening in our Duchenne community. The way an Ask Me Anything works is that we at Cure Duchenne maybe go out to an event and we get a question or a comment or a concern from someone, or somebody tells us about some really cool thing that they learned about. Or in our case today, Marissa told us that she had done a lot of research about travel and she had a lot of great information to share. And we basically invite experts to help us discuss one of those questions, concerns, great ideas. And we bring it to where we get to ask anything we have on that topic. And so it's a great thing. I love how much the topics can be framed to meet the problems and the challenges that we're facing, the fears that we have, or just the great ideas that we have. In my area, I'm in Oklahoma, and it is spring, and actually my kids are on spring break next week, and Cure Duchenne Futures is happening in May. It's just right around the corner, and so it is a really great time for us all to talk about travel, and traveling with disabilities and with Duchenne is really, I know it's a scary thing. My family, we're going in 2 weeks to go see Dr. Wong at UMass. And so I'm already starting to get stressed out about the travel part of that. That always comes with it. So I think it's a really good and timely conversation for us. My name is Leslie Porter. I'm a carrier of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. My son Grant is 13 and he has muscular dystrophy. I'm also the mother of Renna Porter. She is 10 years old, and actually yesterday she just participated in a STEM challenge at her school district, where the goal and the challenge was for students to create an airport that is better for the future. And they're supposed to consider things like sustainability. I hope that they were also considering things like accessibility, because that's something really important for all of us. And so I'm also a community engagement coordinator for Cure Duchenne, and I very proudly hold that role as well. Okay, so in recognition of this conversation today, I am wearing a charm that is St. Christopher. St. Christopher is the saint of travelers, and often St. Christopher is used by truck drivers and a lot of people who travel a lot to have luck along their journey. And so I wanted to tell a little bit about what the story is with St. Christopher, and also give us a tip to kind of use him if we ever have troubles with our travels in the future. So legend has it that St. Christopher was going to be going across a river, and there was a child that asked to be carried across as well. St. Christopher put the child on his back, and even though the child was very heavy, St. Christopher was able to make it across the river. Once across the river, the child was revealed to not be just a child, but to be Jesus carrying the weight of all the people in the world. And so that's why I said that if once we have issues, problems, concerns, stresses about our traveling, we can all put it on the backs of St. Christopher, because he clearly was strong enough to be able to carry that weight. And I also wanted to say that hopefully after this conversation that we have today with our great experts and the information that they bring, that we will not need the help of St. Christopher, because we're going to have the knowledge to be able to handle it, as well as the resources to be able to advocate for ourselves. And in researching for this conversation, I did find a quote that had said that us being advocates is not just helping ourselves, but it's helping other people that are in similar shoes. And so that's how we can always look at advocacy. It's not just for us. And so I'm so glad to be here today. I'm so glad to have this conversation. I know that I have talked a lot so far, but this event is actually co-hosted between myself and Cheryl Morazzo. So I'm going to pass it over to her for a minute so that she can do some of the housekeeping and also help us introduce our speakers. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Leslie. And I apologize. Thank you for your patience, everyone out there in Zoom land. We had a little technical difficulties, but we're good to go right now. This is being recorded, so you can watch this later. If you have any questions, if you missed any links, you can certainly see them later. I want to just mention a few upcoming Cure Duchenne events. One is on Long Island, which I'm excited about, and that's on April 6th. And then we have our Futures event coming up Memorial Day weekend, May 23rd through the 26th. And you can go to cureduchenne.org, click on the events page, and you can find all that stuff. I also want to let you know that we are talking about traveling with Duchenne. So if you could keep your questions to that topic, that would be great. If you have other questions for us, you can always reach out to us at a later time. There is a little Q&A on the bottom there. So if you have any questions, please ask them and our experts can listen to them live. We also would like to do a quick poll, and we have our Lexi, she's our expert behind the screen here. And we have a poll question. If you guys could just take a few minutes to answer questions 1 and 2. How comfortable are you flying with a wheelchair? And how comfortable are you looking for hotel accommodations? And those will be some of the things that our wonderful guest experts expert guests, I guess would be the better way to say that, will handle that. So I'm going to go ahead and write somewhat comfortable and then comfortable on the last one. So we'll just give that a few more minutes and people can answer that. So we have 50% of our people say that they are not comfortable at all flying with a wheelchair on the airplane. So this is going to be great information. Can you see this, Marissa, Adam, and Alan? You can see that? Okay, so you're good to go. All right, so I'm going to stop talking and let's just actually get over to our experts here. So Marissa, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Glad to be here today. I'm Marissa Penrod. I'm coming to you from Michigan today, my home state. I am a mom of 3. I have a 28-year-old daughter,
Yeah,
a
tap the screen.
24-year-old son. Don't tell her I couldn't remember how old she was, and a 21-year-old son, and it's my 21-year-old who has Duchenne.
Thank you. Adam, you want to do an introduction?
Hi, my name is Adam Malone, and I also have Duchenne, and I'm a travel advisor with a company called Adventures by Jamie, and we help people with disabilities travel. So anything you can think of for travel, you need equipment rental, all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that we do. And then we also help just normal individuals without any disability problems travel as well. But at least my specialty is helping people with disabilities travel.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have Alan, who is not on screen, but he, Alan, if you can hear and then you're off of mute, if you could just introduce yourself, that would be great. And bless Alan's heart, he's currently getting an infusion, and here he is on with us to make sure that he can help us with any. Oh, there he is. Okay, Alan. Can you introduce yourself, Alan? Well, maybe he's having technical difficulties.
It's the day for technical difficulties. Next time I'll wear a charm for technical difficulties. I don't know
that
what
might
that
have been
is. We'll
better
have
than
to look that up.
Yeah. So Alan is the vice president for All Wheels Up, and you may be familiar with that now. Oh, sorry.
Hi, sorry about that. So my name is Alan Chaulet. I'm the vice president and founding board member of All Wheels Up, and we're a nonprofit working to make airplanes wheelchair accessible. We're working to have wheelchair spots, and yeah, and I've just said, let's do this for free. I'm 33, and yeah, it's been great being able to help make airplanes accessible.
Okay. Thanks so much for that. And Alan, we really appreciate you being here. We're really excited. I know that there are some new announcements in 2024 about the future of airline travel and the plans for that. And I know that All Wheels Up has really been heavily involved in that. So we're really going to be excited. We're going to kind of go more to you towards the end. I will say that at this point, we're going to start with questions that we are going to just kind of pass around. And while the questions might be addressed to a certain speaker, we welcome this to be a whole conversation. So please speak up if you have a point to make on that. And Marissa, starting with you, I know that you kind of helped us kind of go through this and you kind of help us split this up between before you travel, the day of travel, and at your destination. And so can you just kind of help us with that? I mean, what about before you go, when we are looking at traveling to a location, especially by air, and that we're trying to be prepared for that, what can you tell us? Like, what are some things that are just important for us to consider just when we're getting ready to go?
Sure. Well, so I think the key word is prepare. And the most successful travel happens when we invest a lot of time before we actually travel. So it's in mapping everything out ahead of time. And the way that when I travel with my son, Joseph, the way that we look at it is kind of, we walk through like, what is it going to look like the day that we're traveling? And then once we get to where we're going. And so for us, it starts with number one, where are we going? And how are we getting there? What airline are we taking? So I will share here that just because I fly out of Detroit, it's a big hub for Delta. So most of my experiences I share will be in reference to working directly with Delta Airlines at our airport here, but also at our destinations, wherever we end up. So a couple of tips I can give you about, the airline and reserving is, if at all possible, make it a direct flight. What we don't want to do is go through the stress of getting transferred into an airline seat and then having to get transferred off and hoping that the power chair comes up to us and then we have to get it reloaded on another plane. So always look for a direct flight if possible. One of the things that you'll be asked when you make a reservation is for the measurements of your chair typically. And that's really easy to find. Whatever kind of wheelchair you have, you can go on their website or you can just Google it. Joseph has a Permobile F5. I can Google that at any time and I find out the length, the width, and the height. And then what I like to do too is I like to Google the airplane that we're going to be in. So once we make our reservations, we were just on a 757. So I will Google, Boeing 757 cargo hold door. And that tells you how big the door is. So I know ahead of time if we're going to have to recline the wheelchair, or if we're going to have to lay it flat, or if it can stay upright, or if it can't fit. So there are very few airplanes on which a power chair cannot fit. But the people that you talk to making your reservation are not always going to know those nuances. So you can just Google, once you are ready to make a reservation, Google the airplane, what kind it is, and find out how big the door is. And then what we do is we make our reservations. So we go ahead and reserve our flights. And for Delta, they have a disability hotline. And I call that disability hotline and I let them know that I'm traveling with my son and that he needs full support on the flight, that he cannot fly independently. So Joseph would not be able to lift his arm to push the button, to get the flight crew, or, he can't put his own table down. And so what happens with Delta is that I can book just a regular airfare in the main cabin. And when I call and let them know our situation, they will move us up into Delta Comfort for no charge. So we have more leg room, more seat room. We're more in the front of the plane. It's easier to transfer on and off when we're traveling. And they always do that for us, for Joseph and for one attendant. And
I had read that is the case. And I have to say recently, I mean, a lot of times we end up flying Southwest, and I do live near a hub for Southwest. So that's the reason why. I mean, they make, SNL bits and jokes about how you deserve what you get if you fly with Southwest. And so I realize that it's more of a DIY, but I often get nervous when you go and you see that what I would have to pay in order to ensure that we get a pretty close-up seat on other airlines. So I really appreciate, honestly, you giving us that tip that if we just call that hotline, that I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm really going to use that to my advantage in the future. But that's very helpful. And I'm sorry, I think I did cut you off. That I just think that's a great tip.
I think it's just, so one of the things with all of travel is that we know our situation better than anyone. And I think sometimes we approach these types of events like traveling as though other people know what we're dealing with. And so the most success we have in travel is when we take the approach of, it's really twofold. It's that we have to educate the people who we need to help us. And we also we make new friends, right? We're looking for people to help us. So when I call Delta, I explain the situation. I explain his limitations, what he can and cannot do. And I basically start the conversation with, remember, it's a disability hotline, but they get all sorts of phone calls. And I start by saying, I have airfare booked and I really need your help.
Yes.
And I start with saying, I need your help. And every single time I book main cabin, we get moved to Delta Comfort for no additional fee. And it's always, Joseph needs to be on the aisle, which we can talk about more when we talk about getting on the plane. But I've never had an issue. And just a tip for anybody who's, not real familiar with travel, if you look at a seat map, if you're booking airfare and it, says pick your seats, and you look at a seat map, you'll often see up in the front of the plane, the bulkhead or in Delta, it's the, you know, Delta Comfort, or what we might consider business class, you'll see seats in there that are gray, and they usually have an X through them. Those are actually reserved for people with disabilities or physical needs. So the airlines do tend to that. Those seats can be limited. So the other tip I would say is the sooner you can book your reservations, the better. But there are systems in place to assist us. We just have to figure out the right people to talk to, and we have to figure out how to navigate it.
And Adam, do you have something that you could add to that tip and that conversation?
Yeah. So, first off, about I'm going to go all the way back to kind of that first part about actually getting your advice on about getting your chair on the plane and stuff. So I have one tip, and this might sound maybe counterintuitive, but a good tip I have is to not bring your big wheelchair, but to get something called a portable electric folding wheelchair. So that way, if that gets, you know, damaged or something, it's not a big replacement like the giant Mobile, and their brands like what's the Easy Light Cruiser is one of them, and that's one of the more higher end ones. But they can go down to like 1,500. Also, insurance will pay for that, but I will recommend just doing that out of pocket, because if you have another big wheelchair, you know, coming up, then that will count as that. So I wouldn't do that. But then also, if you're using your large power chair, you have equipment and stuff on it, label each individual part that can be lifted. So for instance, if it's a part that's strong enough to be lifted, then make sure that's labeled, yeah, like that. Label each little part that can be lifted, and each little thing like that, so that a person lifting it will not, you know, pull it by the backrest or something and yank it off. So I would say make sure you label everything if you do have to take your large wheelchair.
And you know, with my family, we travel with a mobility chair. And so the thing that my husband started doing is he started including straps that when we get to the gate and we're ready to have them move it, he straps that down, he Velcros it shut so where they can't accidentally open it up and do something. So then it becomes a little more clear. And I know, Cheryl, you have a card that you do something similar to that. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
we have
go
a
ahead.
document. It's a Word document, and it's basically, those pictures were from Marissa. So I can let you explain those photos. But we do something similar, except we attach it to the wheelchair. But I actually like Marissa's idea where it's actually taped right on the chair, and you can't mess that up. And one of the things that someone mentioned was that the hotline is maybe just for Delta, the disability hotline. I'm not sure if that's
Most airlines have a disability
yeah.
to call.
I
And I
thought
think that
so
is
as
a
well.
good tip, because I know I see that. I know that I see that when we book travel, that you can, if you need extra assistance, call this. Do I often call? I often don't. And so I really do think that's a good idea, just to always make sure that we're starting that conversation. And then we'll feel a little more free to not just fly with Southwest. We'll feel a little more free to maybe branch out a little bit. Okay, so Marissa, maybe you can talk to us about those pictures, and then maybe you can also tell us, it goes right in line with that question, is how do you prepare a wheelchair for plane travel?
Yeah, well, that was part of preparing the wheelchair. So two things is keep it really simple. I used to have a really long Word document, and it was like I was writing, you know, like a love letter to the baggage handlers. You know, this is my son's legs, and this is so important. And when we get there, you know, we can't function if we don't have this. And what I found, I started doing a little informal survey, and they're like, yeah, we're trying to unload 700 suitcases. Like, we're not reading your letter, right? So sometimes we just put a big thank you across it. Like, we'll just tape a big thank you. The key is make it simple. I would also recommend the pictures Cheryl shared of, that's Joseph's old wheelchair. We have not done this yet, but I would recommend too that maybe you translate it and put it in English and Spanish.
Good idea.
We had actually requests from that, from people at the airport who said, hey, if you could, this is amazing. Nobody ever does this. We love this. Thank you for helping us to help you. But I think putting it in English and Spanish would be helpful. The other thing is, Cheryl, right at the top of those photos you've got there, one of the things I would recommend before, this is not really preparing the wheelchair as much, but TSA Cares. TSA has a phenomenal program called TSA Cares. For anybody who needs assistance, and if you're watching this right now, just grab your phone and take a screenshot of that. It's real easy to remember. It's tsa.gov. And what they have is this wonderful program. If you call ahead of time, it's got to be at least 72 hours before your flight. You can let them know your airline, your flight, what your needs are, and they'll actually have a TSA agent meet you at the door of the airport when you get there. And what will happen is they will come and greet you, and they will shepherd you through the entire process of, if you have to check luggage, if you're, when you go through security, they're like your one-on-one concierge for getting through the airport. It's a wonderful program. The one thing that I will say that I learned the hard way, and so we learned to do this now, is that they don't identify for you, where do you meet your TSA agent, right? So if you're at a small airport, you might see like somebody in a TSA uniform by the door and assume it's your agent. But I can tell you, when we fly out of Detroit, it's like chaos when you go into the terminal. So I've learned to ask when I call the number, I'm like, how will I know? Where's my person? But this is a phenomenal program, and I would highly recommend that you use it. The more friends you can have, the more people you can have advocating for you. You almost always, with this program, you go right to the front of the line of security. You never wait in the line. You go immediately to the front, and they're helping you through everything. It's a great program. The other thing I will say is for our young adults, adolescents and young adults, this really fosters, I think, a great sense of independence and confidence that you can travel alone. Like if you're going somewhere with your friends and you're going to get on an airplane, there are systems in place to help you do that. And I think this is a great one.
Adam, do you have anything to add to that point?
I think that's a great program. I was actually reading about it last night. It's not actually something that I've been that familiar with, but yes, that's definitely something good to utilize. And then also actually talking to the airport themselves and telling them what assistance you need also is something helpful to do as well.
Okay, that's great. And I know too that I have learned from my other families and friends that I've met through Duchenne is that to know your rights and to make sure you don't have to argue with people to know and be aware of what your rights are and to educate people what those rights are, but to know. And so just for us, even if we just wanted to Google the Airline Passengers with Disabilities Bill of Rights, and hopefully those things are going to be changing, but just having that knowledge to also help you feel like, if I had done that research before preparation for this conversation, I would have known that the airlines are going to help us with a better seat than me worrying about going back to the 25th seat and how is Grant going to get there.
Yeah.
And so I think that us just making sure that we understand and have gone through and like know what our rights are will give us more confidence, I think, as well. So, okay, so then we've gotten to the airport, we've prepared, I can't talk, we've prepared the wheelchair to get on the flight. So now we're at we've gotten to the gate, we're ready to go on flight. What do we need to know now? What do we need to know about getting to the seat?
Can I back up just a little bit, Leslie, before we get to the gate? Because there's a lot that happens before that, and just a couple of tips that help people is sometimes people aren't sure when they get to the airport, how do I park? So
good point.
A lot of times in the parking decks, there are limited accessible spots. We never worry about it because I just let Joseph off in the middle of the aisle and then I'll pull into any spot.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a great service at many airports, and it's typically with off-site parking, which is cheaper, right? So instead of paying $50 a day for the deck right next to the airport, if you go off-site, might be a mile or so, and you're at an off-site parking, they often have drivers. So we have a parking lot here in Detroit. It's a quick park, it's called, and they're national. And I call ahead and say, hey, we're coming in, we're flying out today at 2 p.m. Can I have a driver take us to the airport? So I pull into the quick park. A valet driver, somebody who normally drives their shuttle buses, a valet driver gets in the van. He now is the driver. He drives us and drops us off at the curb. And then he takes off in our van and brings it back to the quick park and parks it for the week for us. So we're getting curbside service. We're paying about $11 a day instead of $50 a day. And we've got somebody helping us with that. So those are things to check too. I never knew about that until I was actually scrambling to get to the airport and trying to find a valet service, and somebody at the airport told me, they're like, you can get that service. So I love telling people about that because it saves you a ton of money, and it's also, you basically get dropped off at the curb in your own vehicle and then they take care of it.
That's great.
So that's parking. And then luggage. So when you get there, typically you're going to check luggage. Something that a lot of people don't know is that when you have medical issues, there's really not a 1 bag or a 2 bag limit. If it's medical equipment, it flies for free. So if you have, if you're taking, a suitcase and it has any medical equipment in it, whether it's your, a cough assist or it's your medication, you can check that for free. You can take whatever you need. I have taken before. Cheryl, if you want to show my my Hoyer, my big giant carrying case for a Hoyer lift. So I'm going to show this to you guys and say, look at Joseph. Joseph's like covering his face. I cannot believe we're schlepping this through the airport. So I actually got to, it was like, I don't know, 100, 200 pounds or something ridiculous. It would have cost me like $350 if I had to pay to check it, but it's free because it's medical equipment. However,
How did you get it on the cart? I mean, how did you do that part?
Yeah, you ask a lot of people for help. And that's what I was going to say, is that we take our Hoyer when we don't have a choice, but it's not my first recommendation. And I know you guys want to talk about that later when we get to where we're going, but I'm a big fan of renting equipment when we can. We just didn't have the option where we were traveling with this. So we took this big giant Hoyer, which is amazing, right? We're very lucky to be able to do that. But I just want to let everybody know that you do, any medical equipment flies for free. Checking in at the curb is often faster. If you have oversized luggage like this, they may make you go inside, but typically they'll take you to the front of the line. And then this seems pretty obvious, but just a reminder, is anything essential, like, if you're on steroids, if you have medication, anything like 1 or 2 days worth of supplies, don't ever check that, take it in your carry-on. Because the other thing that people don't realize is you never get questioned about how much carry-on you have when it's medical. So, when they're announcing 1 carry-on bag, 2 carry-on bags, it's a full flight. When Joseph's boarded, I mean, sometimes we have 5, 6 different kinds of bags. So don't hesitate to take what you need with you in case anything happened to your luggage.
And for those people who need liquid medications, for people that can't swallow pills, I read in preparation for this as well that you can also work out if it's medication,
Yep.
then you can work with TSA on that you can bring the liquid medications that you need. And so I think that's important too. I think a lot of times, like you said, Marissa, we act like we're everyone else, but we're really something else. And so there are these special qualifications for that.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have any extra things to add about preparing luggage or preparing getting to the airport, anything like that? Do you have anything else to add to that conversation?
No, I think that covered it pretty much.
Okay, that's good. I thought so too. I just want to make sure. Okay, Marissa, so now did we cover the stuff that we need to cover before now we're at the gate, or are we still needing to do some stuff?
Well, we're almost to the gate. What I want
Okay.
to tell you is that when you go through security, there's usually a handicap line where somebody, in the airport will look for you. They're always scanning for people in wheelchairs or for people who need assistance. And if you do TSA cares, this may happen faster. But if you don't do TSA cares and have a personal TSA escort, you usually will go right to the front of the line. If you haven't traveled in your power chair before and you're unable to stand, kind of a heads up, you will get a full body pat down. And sometimes when they're really busy, it takes a long time for somebody to come and tend to you or to your son. So right when I hand my boarding pass and my ID to the TSA agent who's checking us into security, I just kind of reference Joseph and I say, we're going to need a full male assist. And he knows by that a full assist, Joseph cannot stand, he can't get out of the chair, and we need a male attendant to do that. So just that, I'm always thinking of things that, number 1, decreases frustration, and number 2, kind of helps us move faster through all the lines. So after that, we're at the gate.
Okay, well, and I was going to say, in research for this, I did see that the most complaint that people with disabilities have about travel is the waiting. It is the feeling like they're just waiting for somebody who has a second to help. So that advice is just giving us the preview as to where we can kind of help let everybody know what's coming.
Yeah.
and hopefully help them know that they need to be prepared to have enough. And I had read as well that if you don't call ahead of time, we don't have to call ahead of time and let them know. But if we are going to require a chair at some point or some sort of an escort at some point, if we don't let them know ahead of time, then that means that we're probably going to have to wait a little longer for them to go get the equipment that they need to serve us. And so I do think that that's just really good advice. And I am more of a DIYer. I haven't done all this before in this way. And I really do think I'm going to change my ways based on a lot of these tips you're giving us today. Okay, so now we have finally reached the gate.
Well,
sounds
and
like-
one quick thing,
Sounds like we've had quite a
about-
journey already, but we're at the gate now. We're there. And so what do we need to
Leslie,
do now
Alan-
over there?
Alan was just trying to say something.
Oh,
Alan, go
please,
ahead.
Alan, I'm so sorry.
yeah, so with the TSA, like, it's very like worth like looking at TSA pre-check. Like it's like, I think it's like $75 a year, but it helps you get past like so much of the TSA stuff, because that really is some of the worst part, because like they really dehumanize you, and you really like deal with so many like, yeah, like terrible things like that, you know, people should not be, you know, like,
Gowns and all that.
yeah, like should not be forced to do. And just, yeah, like making sure you call the airline like a week before your flight and like the day before it's one of the best things you can do, because like if you just show up at the airport, like, you know, like when they just find out there that you're in a wheelchair, that just makes it tougher for everyone. And it definitely increases the risk of like your chair being damaged.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And you know, you made a great point. TSA pre-check is, I think, one of the best inventions, and it's really for 5 years. It's that much money for 5 years. And I'm just afraid that everyone's going to know. And then all of a sudden, all the TSA pre-check lines are going to be longer than the general. But it's fantastic. Every time I get to keep my shoes on, I just know it was well worth that money. So I agree with you on that. It's a really good point. And, you know, to that dehumanizing thing, if we feel like we're just waiting around, that we don't have the assistance that we need, the equipment's not there, and we're waiting on an already stressful day, we're going to feel more dehumanized. So to take it into our own hands and make sure that we are doing all the things that we can do to ensure that we're getting the best help we can get is going to be better for us and better for them. So thank you, Alan, for telling us that. Okay, so now we're at the gate. How are we going to get to our seat? Now we know we're in a Delta comfort seat. It's going to be great. We're going to be traveling in style now. How do we get there, Marissa?
So what I would say is get there early and get to the gate early. We always get there way before boarding. So if it says you're boarding at, let's say 5 p.m. is boarding, they're probably going to start boarding you early. So if you look at all the special situations for boarding, you know, they'll say if you have a stroller, you need special assistance, or, you know, military veterans or active military. Somebody in a power wheelchair will always go absolutely ahead of all of those people. You will be the first of the first groups. And that's because they won't transfer you into an aisle chair. So for anybody watching who isn't familiar and has never done this, an aisle chair is a little teeny narrow, very uncomfortable, temporary little chair that the airlines have in order to, I think I have a picture, Cheryl, let's see. Well, that's one right there. So Joseph's literally in an aisle chair here. They'll transfer you into this aisle chair, but they won't do it up at the gate. They have to do it once you've been down the jet bridge. They won't do it till you're at the, you know, the door of the plane. And so we get there real early and we just say, I say, hey, you know, we're checking in. This is Joseph. He's sitting in, you know, 10A. And we just wanted to let you know that we're here. And I always say this, I say, we just wanted to know, how can we be helpful to you in the boarding process so that you can get us started and we can help you keep things moving. And so typically what will happen is we'll just ask them, what time would you like us to be here waiting for you and ready, because we're there early, and they'll always give us a time. And then I remind them that we need an aisle chair, which is what Joseph's in right there in that photo. And then for Joseph, you know, he's completely non-ambulatory, he's 21. And I always say it's a 2-person transfer. And more often than not, they'll say, oh, we only have one person. Thank you for letting us know. I'm going to call right now and make sure they send two. So it's a 2-person transfer, letting them know that. And then I let them know right at that point that I'm going to need to talk to the baggage handler on the ground crew. And they look at me, they're like, you mean the people loading the baggage? I'm like, yes. And they'll say, inevitably, Joseph's wheelchair is 450 pounds. And they'll say, well, we'll just take it down the steps. And I laugh and I'm like, it's 450 pounds. It has to go in the freight elevator. And we have permanent tags now in Joseph's wheelchair because we travel quite often. We have a permanent Delta tag that they just scan and it's linked to his Sky Miles account, so they know it's him. And then there's a sheet they give you now that you have to write, like, how much does this weigh? What are the dimensions? How do you turn it on? Dry cell or wet cell battery? And you fill this out. And it's in a hard plastic sheet. It all hangs off the back of Joseph's chair. So we're kind of ready to go.
I agree with that too. And Southwest also has now a form like that. And so I decided just to go ahead and say, these are things I think we're going to have to answer every time. I, like you, I printed it, laminated it. So now we have it every time and it's always there. And I think that every airline probably has that, or even if they don't have that form, if you could find one of them for a different airline, every airline is going to ask you these questions and need to know every time.
Yes, and I know for Delta, they require it. So they actually provide the form at the gate if you don't already have it because it's required. And then one thing that a lot of people aren't familiar with is that many airports now have what they call a white glove service for wheelchairs. And it's called white. And so when I check in at the gate, I'm like, do you have white glove service today? Meaning, do you have enough staff that you have trained? And these people are specially trained in how to handle power wheelchairs. So I'll
I've
ask
never
you,
heard of this before.
white glove service today. And they're like, yeah, we have 3 people on. I'll call one of them now. So now you get another special attendant to come and help you. And I will say that, so, and Adam, I love what you said. It's a great reminder about, that decision. Do you want to travel with your power chair or do you want to have sort of a travel chair? For some guys, it's not possible to do a travel electric chair. Like, it depends where we're going and for how long. So the chair, the way Joseph and I look at it is his power chair is part of his body. It's his legs. It supports his back. He has a lot of compression fractures. So our approach is he deserves to have the safety and security of taking the chair he needs. And it's up to everybody around us to support that and to make sure that chair is protected and it's not damaged. And I'll tell you how we do that. And but I want to just let Adam jump in about being at the gate if there's anything else. And then I'll share with you how we travel with his power chair every single time.
There's really not much to add. I will say that I believe it's only 2 transfers, one to the aisle chair and then one to your seat, and then you do that when you get off. But so it's not too much. I mean, it's a hassle to be picked up and stuff, but it should be only on and then off.
Okay, so does the airline staff are they the ones that have something like a perfect lift, or is that something you're bringing with you to do those
You
transfers?
usually you have to bring that, or they'll pick you up themselves out. One person behind you put their arms up underneath your arms, and then someone grab your legs and move you. But it's easier to have something like a perfect lift underneath.
And Marissa, is that the same for you? Do you guys bring a perfect lift with you to help with this?
So we don't, so we actually use something different. So there's a couple of options. And this is a great reminder. We do this at home. So what we do is we put Joseph in his Hoyer or his ceiling lift. We lift him up. We get the lift under him before we even leave our house. So when we get to the airport, his lift is under him. So there's a couple different options. I know the perfect lift is a great option for so many people. I have, if you look, Cheryl, will you pop up that photo of Joseph just in that aisle chair again, the one you already showed? So you can see here the yellow straps and in the back of it's white. This is called a mega mover. It's about $20 on Amazon. We have 2 of them in Joseph's, the back of his wheelchair backpack. We have an extra one at home. I have one in my car. It's very, very lightweight and it's incredibly strong. And I think it's got like 12 straps on it. So we do this, make sure that's under Joseph before we even get to the airport. And for Joseph, with having, pretty severely contracted legs and having compression fractures, it's just not an option anymore for him to have anyone lift him under his shoulders. It's too painful. And so we always have a lift underneath.
Well, and just reducing the risk. I mean, I know when we help Grant, there's times we pinch his skin. I mean, it's just not the best situation. And so having
Yeah.
something that you can just feel a little more assured. And I am curious, Marissa, when you talk about all of this stuff, the white glove service, all this, I'm wondering how much Joseph, what are his thoughts about this? Is he game for all of this? Is he embarrassed? What are
No, he
his thoughts?
loves
What's
it.
his
When
thoughts?
when they do the full body pat down, he teases them. He's like, "Ooh, could you go a little to the right over there? Can you go a little higher?" He's got just a general sense of acceptance, like he wants to get out and see the world, and this is just how we navigate
This is
it.
how you have to do it.
And we make so many friends, and there's so many good people in the world. This is like another tip in terms of the baggage handlers. So we always ask to meet with them. They come up. This is us arriving in Atlanta. When they see Joseph's name on the manifest and his wheelchair, they all come up and greet him now when we get places. This is our crew in Atlanta. They come on the plane. "Hey buddy, what's up? How's it going? We've been looking for you." We have a crew in Detroit. So if you go, Cheryl, right up, it says Joe with Joe. Oh, this is one of our dear friends in Boston. When Joseph gets off the plane, he's like, "Buddy, I've been praying for you. How are you?" And
Oh,
it's really like, there's a lot of stress in traveling with the wheelchair. So when you have these people, and it's just because we talk to him, Joseph's real friendly. This guy came out into the airport and sat and chatted with Joseph for about 10 minutes about what's going on in college. If you show Cheryl, there's one that says Joe with Justin. This is our crew at Detroit. So this is our departing airport. This is our home airport. And it makes me emotional to see this because
Yeah.
so Justin in the middle, he's the OSM, he's the manager on the ground crew at Detroit. So he runs all the baggage, everything. So I have Justin's cell phone number. Now, so when we're traveling, I call him the day before and I tell him our flight number, and these two guys are white glove. These are the white gloves in Detroit,
Oh.
and they're on call for us. And then they book in their phones when we're returning. This is a flight we got in late. It was about 10 o'clock. These guys were off work at 7 and they
stayed.
They stayed because they wanted to get Joseph's wheelchair off the plane and Joseph safely. And it's just because we just look for the opportunity to make friends with people. And we're always saying, "We need your help. And thank you so much. And you don't know what this means to us. And this is so important."
Yeah, that's so.
I think
Cheryl and Adam, I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna start name dropping Joseph's name and try to get on these coattails. This sounds great.
Especially in Boston where we are.
Yeah,
This
we
is
need all the
our-
friends we can get there.
This is our crew in Hawaii.
Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, Alan.
Tap it.
I think he's
Yeah,
trying.
unmute. Hi.
You're unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Sorry about that. So, one of the things that we also recommend as well is the adapt transfer sling. Like, there's a coupon code on our website for 15% off. And yeah, one of the other things which is really important to do is like you get like an air tag and put it on the wheelchair so you can track exactly where it is. 'Cause lots of times, like the crew will tell you it's in one place, but it'll be somewhere completely different. Then you can grab your phone and be like, "No, it's actually right here."
Good point. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I know that we are kind of taking longer. It's just so important. There's so much to learn here, but can we jump ahead to just kind of, I do want to, if we can, talk about like comfort during a flight. And I know that from one of your pictures, you are kind of covering something that I know a lot of people deal with, that on long flights, I know a lot of guys with Duchenne just really try difficult not to have anything to drink so that they don't have to deal with the possibility of using the restroom while they're on a flight. Can you talk to us, you guys, about what you do or what you recommend for comfort during a flight, especially with considerations like that?
Adam, do you want to take that first?
I don't really have much information on that.
Okay.
Adam shared with
I
us,
can-
Marissa, that he is he's a driver. So that's why
Yes.
we've been throwing you a lot of the flight questions, because
Okay.
he is an expert when it comes to driving and when it comes to getting definitely to any of the Disney parks. But for flying, I really do think that you and Alan are experts on that area.
So let's
Yes.
jump back to those photos, Cheryl. There's one of you showed the urinal, but there's also one. Yep. So this is something we are never without. is the urinal. Sure, if you just go back to that for 1 second, just the urinal shot. Cheryl, you're good at this. I'm gonna
I
take
don't,
you everywhere.
I'm
It's
not
It's
okay.
sure.
one that shows the entire urinal, Cheryl.
I just had it. Where'd it go?
I know it went
It's at the
somewhere.
bottom.
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
So this is something, again, we order off Amazon. We usually order 3 to 5 of these at a time. So we've got, you know, we never run out. This is really easy. The bucket at the bottom that looks like a milk jug. That's obviously, you know, where the urine goes. It's also detachable though. That tube comes off the top. So you can use this without the receptacle. And if you're in a public restroom, you can just dangle the end of this right into a toilet and go to the bathroom through the blue tube. And then Cheryl, if you go to the picture of the pants that you had up, I'm going to show you how we deal with this. So Joseph just likes regular pants like any other guy, right? And that's what we do. We just buy regular pants. And then I take him to a seamstress, and in you can see the seam of the leg there. If you look right near the bottom of the blue of that urinal, you'll see a little, thanks Cheryl, that's a zipper. So I take him to a seamstress. I have an invisible zipper installed in the pants, in the leg. So Joseph doesn't have to worry about getting them on and off. He just unzips the zipper and he puts that urinal up in the pants and he pees right in the urinal. And
It's a
when you're
really
on an
great idea.
airplane, it's pretty easy. You know, I have a list of supplies, like we carry this in a drawstring bag, and then we always take a light blanket with us.
Yeah.
If you need to go, you just drape a blanket over your lap, and however you do this, but for us, the zipper, this is why it's amazing, because Joseph's not like pulling his pants down. You just go, and you have the receptacle on the end. It's in a drawstring bag. Very few people, you know, have any clue what you're
Even-
doing.
yeah,
I'd say
yeah.
nobody knows what you're doing. And it just works that way. I will say, for if we could just like be really frank and say, what about poop? If you're on a long flight, which is what we worry more about, any
Exactly.
airplane that is considered like a transatlantic or would cross an ocean, it has two aisles, right? So the big jets, they're actually required, they have to have an accessible bathroom in it. And so we went to Hawaii this summer, and we were on a huge jet with 2 aisles, and it's required for an accessible bathroom. So when we got on, first of all, I double checked when we booked. And then when we got on the flight, I went to the back and I asked the flight attendant to show me the accessible restroom. And he was wonderful. He showed it to me and he said, it's actually 2 right now. What we do when you need to use it is we just push this wall back and it becomes one big, huge bathroom.
Great.
In the aisle chair, there's always got to be an aisle chair on board every airplane. I highly recommend people ask when they get on, ask the flight crew to check to find the aisle chair. We were on a flight once and the aisle chair was gone. There was no aisle chair on that flight. Somebody had done maintenance on the closet and they didn't put it back. So there are all those kinds of options. So there are definitely options. I think it's natural to be concerned about, you know, what are just normal human bodily functions. But there are workarounds and there are ways to navigate it. Up until a couple of years ago, I was able to transfer Joseph into the regular airline restroom. Now I had to hold him on the toilet. I couldn't shut the door. So I would let him know when we got on the plane. We would go in the first class restroom and they would just pull the curtain and we would leave the door open. So we just made do with whatever we had to do.
And Alan, thank you so much for sharing all that. I think that's all going to be very helpful stuff. The zipper and the pant and the urinal is going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to benefit from that. Alan,
Yeah, and
I think I heard you chime in. Do you have something else to add to the comfort while you're on a flight?
yeah, so there's also like the Depends, like those are very good and reliable, but there's also the condom catheters. They're similar to the ones that you showed, but like it's just like a condom, like attached to a tube, and like, yeah, there's the little bag, like, but like you can put it in like the leg of your pants, and like for many people, you don't need to go to a seamstress. Like there's already all kinds of like accessible pants that have all this kind of stuff, and like they're getting cheaper. Like they used to be very expensive, but now like Walmart and Target
Yeah.
sell them, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's some few like very good brands.
Yeah, I think that's a great note and it's true. Cheryl, were you going to say
I
something?
was going to say, when you use a condom catheter, just make sure it's all connected.
That's That's good advice.
Just would like to put that out there. But yeah, no, so great. Let's continue.
Okay, so now I think that we have gotten on and off the flight. I think we need to jump to when we're at the destination, when we get there. And something really good that I found that I read in research for this is that people suggest getting detailed confirmations in writing, that they always email the hotel the specific hotel room that they've requested, because I've heard from a lot of people that they book the right room. When they get there, that room is not there. So one of the things that I read is to always do email communication with the hotel to have proof. Excuse me, there's more technical difficulties happening all the time, but to prove that you did make the reservation for the room that you actually require with your accessibility needs. Adam, do you want to start us off with this?
Yes. So this is my wheelhouse right here. So as a travel advisor who helps people with disabilities, that's actually something, even if it's not me, if it's another travel advisor, they will actually do all that for you. So you don't have to worry about it. They'll check with the hotel, ask if a Hoyer can fit underneath the bed, if it's a platform bed, because obviously those horrible platform beds don't work with the Hoyer lifts. So you can check. So we'll do all that for you. But if you're doing it yourself, really, you just need to call and ask all those kind of questions. About is the roll-in shower, how big is the roll-in shower, and then on the bed, check if it's a platform bed or not. And so if it's not, if it is a platform bed, what I recommend is going to a suite hotel that have sofa beds. Because the Hoyer lift can go underneath that. And so obviously those aren't comfortable. So what I do is put a blow-up mattress on top of the sofa bed, and then it becomes comfortable. So, but I will say at all the Disney hotels, if anyone's going to a Disney trip, they are not platform beds because people put luggage and stuff under those. So, but make sure you always check if it's a platform bed or not. And if it is, I would recommend looking at suite hotels like Embassy Suites, Residence Inn, Comfort Suites. Anything that has suite in it will usually have a sofa bed.
I think too that Adam, you shared a little bit before we began that you do specialize in service for people with disabilities.
Yes.
And so please think about Adam, because I know there's so many of these things that we haven't thought of, especially if we haven't experienced ourselves. Think of Adam again. Will you share again the name of your travel agency?
So I work for the agency called Adventures by Jamie.
And so he specializes in this. He can help us figure out some of these things. And I know one of the things that I've learned is just because it's an accessible room does not mean it's a wheelchair accessible room. That a lot of those
Yep.
accessible rooms are hearing accessibility, different kinds of accessibility.
Mhm.
And so it's really important that we specify exactly what we need. Marissa, do you want to go into what you guys do whenever you get to a hotel room? Or wait, you want to go back to we can rent equipment, because all of a sudden if you don't have that 3,000 pound Hoyer lift suitcase with you, you have some different plans for when you get to a destination. You want to go back to that?
Sure. I mean, the carrying equipment like a Hoyer is tough too, because if you rent a van, it's very difficult to fit that carrying case in a regular accessible van. But there are a lot of rental services. I think some of the differences, and Adam, you might have some great insights on this, is that a lot of them only rent for a week at a time. So if it's a weekend, sometimes you don't have the option to just rent for that short time. And then the key is to make sure that they do delivery to your hotel, and then that the hotel will take the delivery before you get there, because you want it waiting for you when you arrive.
So I actually work with a company that actually has a bunch of locations all around the country that will rent your Hoyer lift, rolling shower chair, all that kind of stuff. And they also do that for cruises too. You can get a hospital bed to put in your cruise cabin. Then you can also rent those for your hotel, all that kind of stuff. So we work with a company called Special Needs Group, and then another one that's out of Orlando that I need to get the name of, but so give me a moment to tell you what the name of that one in Orlando is. But if you're just traveling around the country, a special needs group is who we use. I'm just finding that message real quick.
In my research for this, I found some helpful little tidbits that I thought might be good to know. Is that I always worried about what is the accessibility of a cruise, and I did some research that there were a couple of that they recommended even more, but that cruises a lot of times are more accessible than what we would think. And Adam talking about some of those things that you can do about having that set up. I think that's a really good tip. One of the things I read is that the Eiffel Tower is actually really accessible to get up and to go see, that there's a lot of platforms and a lot of accessibility. That the Colosseum, even though it was built 2000 years ago, that there's actually now an elevator and it's actually an accessible thing for you to go see. Whether or not Rome in itself and Paris of it in and of itself, I don't have those tidbits, but I did think that that made me feel more at ease to think, okay, so those are some places that maybe we can put on our list at some point if we get lucky enough. And I'm curious too. I know something that we have experienced in my family is that we went and we rented a hotel and it had an accessible shower, but we did not have a shower chair. And so is that something that's a common thing? Is that something that we have to take upon ourselves to rent ahead of time? Or can we count on hotels to have accessible shower chairs for us? Either one of you that if you had an Adam, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I have some stuff I want to say.
Oh,
So,
sure. I'm so sorry. Yes, please.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
And I
so
need to find that link.
yeah, so it's really good to have like a portable shower chair. There's some really good ones on the market. There's one called like the Shower Buddy, and like they fit like in a little suitcase like the Hoyer lifts. And I think that's really good to have because like the ones with wheels really make a difference for us with GMD. If it's just like a bench, like that's really hard like for us to use.
That's true. That's true. Okay,
And
while Adam looks that up, Marissa, what about, okay, so I don't want us to jump over, but I know that we're just running out of time. And so I just want to make sure that we're kind of covering the top things that you recommend for when we get to a hotel.
Yeah, I think it's just planning ahead. And I think if you have any questions at all, ask to talk to the facilities and maintenance person because they're the person who's most familiar with the rooms. So whenever we make a reservation, if there's any hesitation on the width of the doorway, or for us, it's, sometimes there's a grab bar and the doorways are wider, but when we get into the bathroom, there's no turning radius, like just a wheelchair can't fit in it. So I'll often just ask to talk to the maintenance or the facilities person. And I gotta say that often they're super excited because they don't interact with guests that much, and this is their thing. And they're like, I'm gonna go up there right now. I'm gonna take my measuring tape and I'll take pictures and I'll send you pictures." And so again, I think with the hotel, it's really it's a lot of preparation, just thinking through what does your day look like at home? Like what accommodations did you need to make in your own home in order to have your power wheelchair? And so which ones of those accommodations do you also need when you're at a hotel, and just thinking through like how to make sure that's the case. It's so nuanced and it's different for everyone. But again, it goes to making a phone call and planning ahead.
That's great. And Adam, as far as that link that you want to share, please wait. We can share that
I just
afterwards, or
found
we can
it.
share that at the end, because
Okay.
I'd love to get your input on this. But Cheryl, go ahead. I think you have something you want to say.
So just a couple of quick things. Marissa, someone asked, obviously you can't get the wheelchair wet. So when you get to the hotel, do you ask for a specialized shower chair? Do you bring yours with you? And is that also something you can rent? And then in the event you go someplace, but you really can't afford to rent some, like any recommendations on that? And then I put a bunch of links into the chat, Adventures by Jamie. And then from our website, we also have a travel tip. If you go to the Cure Duchenne Futures page, and there's an Orlando and Cloud of Goods. So there are some links there, but obviously that's just in Orlando. So
Well, that's actually the link I was going to send. Is
Well,
I
the
beat
see,
you
link
it
that
to
I
all
it.
put.
works
See,
out.
That's the
Marissa,
other
I
company
am
we
good at
work with.
this.
You are the best. You are awesome. So I've never been to a hotel where they provided a shower chair. It's just not something that typically they do. And the unfortunate reality is that rentals are expensive.
yeah, and
There's, a couple things maybe to consider is, how does your young adult feel about showering? And if you're gone for 3 or 4 days, is there a pool with a lift? Often there's a pool with a lift. So you can at least, get in and clean up a little in the pool. Can you do just a sponge bath, a bird bath for
Mhm.
however long you're gone?
I've never heard it
There are
called a
good
bird
things
bath. I
for
like
that.
that. Alan, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, like with the hotel staff, like if their bed is a platform bed, you can ask them to like, use bed risers and like,
Mhm.
yeah, they're always happy to help you do that. And many people in DMD and other disabilities, like they buy their own bed risers. So if the bed is on a platform, they just put it underneath those.
Mhm.
And I have talked to
Sometimes
people
they make them
before who
heavy
have.
though.
Oh, go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry I cut
I
you
was
off.
gonna say that sometimes the hotels won't do it because sometimes the beds are like really really pushed down with the platforms, but usually yes, they will raise them.
And I've talked to people before who have had hotels actually remove the platform to where they don't have. I've heard lots of different people do lots of different things, but the thing that they're all doing is communicating with the hotel, being aware of what our needs are, of what our rights are, and then kindly trying to just open up that communication where we don't just feel like we are a second class or not able to do this. And just I think too having that knowledge, because for us the shower chair thing was something that we just took for granted, that if they had an accessible shower, they'd also have a chair. And so it isn't fun to learn that the hard way. It's better to know ahead of time and to be prepared for that so you've got it with you. Okay, so let's see. What about transportation once you get to a place? Do you guys have good advice for that? Adam, do you have something to tell
So
us about that?
basically there when that's something that we can set up for people too. But basically you'll just Google where you're going, like let's say you're going to Atlanta wheelchair accessible van rental, and then look through there, and usually there will be options for that. Now if there isn't one that you can actually rent, then you need to look into transportation options like Uber has accessible vehicles in New York, Washington D.C., and I think the other was Los Angeles, and they're called WAV. So you do the same thing as on the Uber app, but they'll send a wheelchair accessible van. And then in Dallas, they use a Lyft that's a wheelchair accessible. And then most cities, big cities, will have accessible taxis as well.
Okay, and Marisa, do you have something extra to add to that?
No, we often rent a accessible van, but if you're looking to do some traveling for fun and you've got options and you want to economize and not have to pay that expense, they're very expensive. They're about $150 a day. I would recommend, looking at a big city because public transportation is really typically easy to use, even bus systems. I mean, Joseph's away at college. He's at Michigan State, which is massive Big Ten university, and he rides the bus. All the buses are accessible. They all have lifts. So just, think through how you want it to look and what you're able to spend, and public transportation is a great option when it's available.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
is. That's a great idea.
because some of the
Alan.
subways are
Oh,
good.
yes,
Like
good.
for
Go
one
ahead.
of
I'm
the
sorry.
for one of the PPMD conferences, I was at the advocacy conference years ago in DC. Like we took the flight down to DC, where we took public transportation, like right to the hotel. And
Yeah.
yeah, in some places it's great. And also just in terms of Uber, like Uber Wave, like it's like available like in like every city, but it just depends like, which city. Like some of them are a lot better than others because some rural places, like it'll be impossible to find accessible Uber.
Yeah. And Alan, I'm hoping too that you will talk to us a little bit now about All Wheels Up and the work you're doing and the strides that have happened that are recently coming to fruition for disabled travel and flights in particular.
Yeah, of course. So we're a research and advocacy nonprofit working on getting like a wheelchair spot on airplanes. I've been part of this since 2014. We've been around since 2011, and just like so much huge progress has happened in the time that I've been here. Because when I started, like there was nothing at all. There was no like research, nothing happening in government or like within the private sector, and like just many big things that happened like over the years. And so last week at the White House, the Department of Transportation announced a new like wheelchair rule, and some of the stuff it's going to have is it's going to like mandate annual training for everyone that handles like the wheelchairs and deals with passengers that use wheelchairs. And it's also like when your wheelchair gets damaged, right now you have to use like the company that the airlines use. And yeah, so with that new rule, you'll be able to choose to use your own like wheelchair vendor, which is really going to help. And they're just like going to have a lot more like they're going to have it where every time a wheelchair is mishandled, like it's a like automatic violation of the like Air Carrier Access Act. And we think that's going to make a big difference. And it does several other things. And we have a press release about it on our website with a link. Like it's in the Federal Register. So for the next 60 days, people can leave like a comment. We really hope many people do that, and advocacy organizations. And one thing which is happening through Congress right now, this already passed the House. It passed like a Senate committee, but so every 5 years, the FAA funding has to be reauthorized. So in that, like, there's all kinds of accessibility stuff that gets included in that passes. Like in 2018, like Senator Tammy Duckworth, she so she made that rule where all the airlines have to say how many wheelchairs they bring every month, and just like that data has been enormous. And now we can see the scale of the problem,
right.
and it's 31 wheelchairs like a day, and that's unacceptable. Like if there's like 31 pairs of legs that were broken
Exactly.
every day, like there would be riots. There'd be so much stuff.
Let's look at
And
it like this. If it was cars in the parking garage, I mean, if we're even looking at it as our transportation rather than our legs, if it was cars in the parking garage and there were that many of the big damage every day by the airport, there would have been something done. And so I think that is such a good, valuable point that you're making there.
yeah, and so yeah, so they're working on the current one through Congress, and one of the big things it's going to do is it's going to like require all the airlines to say the size of their cargo hold. So when you're like booking a ticket, you'll be able to see like, oh, okay, this airplane can fit my wheelchair in easily. Like, there'll be less chance of damage, because the damage that does happen is like when they'll turn the wheelchair like on its side, and like sometimes they have to like tilt it all the way back to fit like under the cargo hold.
I think, Leslie, if I could add on there about, because I know we've covered so much ground, but the wheelchair issue, I think it's super important. There's two things, and Alan, thank you for reminding me of this. It's once Joseph's loaded on the plane, I always go back off the plane onto the jet bridge, and I stand and wait with the wheelchair until the baggage handlers come up. And I talk with them, and I ask them if they've ever driven one like this, and I show them how to put it into neutral and how to push it, because they have to push it through the airport to get to the freight elevator. And then some of them prefer to drive it. So I show them how to put it in neutral, out of neutral, how to drive it. And then I ask them ahead of time if it looks like they're going to need to recline it. And if so, I recline it for them. We take the headrest, we take anything we can take off, and then I take that back onto the plane and put it up in the luggage. And then we always take bubble wrap and tape, and we tape and wrap the joystick. Now, that's not going to protect the joystick if a suitcase falls on it or there's massive turbulence. It's more of sort of just an alert, like, hey, this is fragile and it's really important. So we try to be really proactive about like educating the crew on how to take care of it. The other thing that I think is important is you can ask that baggage crew to radio ahead. They take pictures of Joseph's wheelchair and they email it ahead to our destination, to that crew. And they say, this is coming. Here's the lever to put it in neutral. Here's how you drive it. The other thing that a lot of people don't know, your very best friend on your flight is the pilot. So whenever we get on a plane, I ask to talk to the pilot before we take off. And I meet with the pilots and I explain. And I say, could you radio ahead to Boston, LA, wherever, and let them know this wheelchair is on board and that it really needs special consideration.
Good
When
idea.
you land, the only person who can get off that plane and go onto the tarmac and supervise that is the pilot or the co-pilot. So they're on alert. I ask them when we've landed, land the plane first, get us to the jet bridge. When that's done and you're good, you turned everything off. Can you put on the orange vest and head down onto the pavement and supervise this wheelchair? Because they can go back and forth. And I've had it happen before where they go down and they're supervising and they'll come running back up the steps and they'll be like, Marissa, how do you do this? Because they're not clear. And they will pause the team and then they will go back down. So make friends with your pilot.
That's great. Good tip.
They're the ones who can do that and protect that wheelchair. And I think
I've
that's
used that.
we haven't had issues.
And you
Marissa
guys,
gave
I
me that
know that
advice
we're over.
before.
I know we're longer on time. I could talk about this stuff even longer. Cheryl, do you want me to take it back to you for you to do our last poll questions, and then maybe we can get like parting words of wisdom from everybody before we cut it. We do appreciate everybody staying on late. It's been a really great conversation.
It has. I almost feel like we should have done airfare in one, hotel in the other, because it's quite
We
a,
could
and
have done
Marissa,
it.
you've
Yeah,
given
it's
us,
two.
you've
Yeah.
given us great information, and that's actually who told me talk to the pilot. So I do that every time. But man, I learned about full assist, white air, white
White glove.
This is, I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. So Lexi, if you can hear me, if you can do our last poll, and we'd like to know, now that we've heard all of this great information, how do you feel more comfortable traveling with a wheelchair dependent person? And how do you feel about getting to your destination, your hotel accommodations? Do you feel more comfortable now that you've heard all of this great information about traveling with that? So go ahead and take the poll for whoever is on here. And we sure hope that you're much more comfortable than you were when you arrived today. I know I am, and I travel all the time with Jake. But Marissa,
I
man,
do too.
and
I learned a
Adam and
lot, and we
Alan,
travel a lot too.
great.
And so, yeah, I appreciate this conversation a lot.
And I'm trying to, apparently I'm not able to put
I
all my
know.
chat in, but I will.
Well, look at
We have
that.
much more. Look at that. Do you see that? So nice job. This is great. We
That's
had
great. That's really
50%
good.
were not comfortable at all at the beginning, and now look at
Yeah.
where we are.
Good
That's
job. This is a pat on the back for our experts. Thank you so
that's
much for all of that.
awesome.
Can we go around and have everybody just give any parting words of wisdom, anything that maybe you left out or that you want to make sure that you say before we end this call? Adam, can we start with you?
Yeah, I would say that when you're looking at destinations, I would say look at bigger cities and stuff that have like a big metro area, so there are things to do around, so you're not trapped in a hotel room having to walk around. Look for things to do. They're accessible excursions all around the country and all around the world, where you can get out and do stuff, and they'll have accessible. For instance, cruise excursions. They have accessible ones where they'll pick you up in an accessible van, or like in Cancun, I've seen like a dinner on a pirate ship type thing. Like there are things out there where you can get out and do things that are accessible and have a lot of fun doing it. There are tons of stuff out there.
Cheryl has just shared in the chat Adventures by Jamie, the website. So please, yeah, let's book with Adam. I'm going to book with Adam in the future. Maybe this trip that we're looking at this summer, maybe I'm going to contact you, Adam, and see if you can help me do it a
So
little
when you
more
use that
effectively.
link, make sure if you want to use me, make sure you request Adam, because it's an agency and we have several
Okay.
agents. And the agency is specialized in accessibility, but not many of them are not actually in wheelchairs. We only have about 2 people, including me. And then the owner, obviously, she's also in a wheelchair, so she's also great to work with too. But make sure you request if you need that kind of assistance.
I don't think a lot of people know about this, about just getting help in this way. So I think it's a great tip. And why not? Why not make sure that we have it all covered? So thank you so much, Adam, for that. And thank you really for your time today. It's been great meeting you.
Yeah.
Alan, may we hear from you, please? Do you have any parting words that you'd like to say?
Yeah, just that, like, so much is happening inaccessible air travel, and there's some really big progress happening. And if people like want to know more and get involved, definitely follow us on social media, and because there's many places doing a lot with this, like the MDA with advocacy, like they do a great job with this, and yeah, we think like there's definitely going to be a wheelchair spot in the future. It's just like when it happens, and like any option is on the table, and yeah, like we know it's definitely going to happen now. It's no longer like a crazy, like far-fetched dream, and yeah, I think like also know like your rights. There's a lot more stuff on the DOT website, like the Disability Bill of Rights, because it's some of the stuff like if your wheelchair ever gets damaged, you have to go to the complaint resolution officer, and you have to make those complaints like before you leave the airport, because you can't like file it after you leave the airport. And like if you have to file a complaint, do it with the airline and the DOT, like because we need to see the numbers. Like we need to know, like, how many wheelchairs are getting damaged, which airports, like which airline. And yeah, so we think like, yeah, things are just gonna keep like improving. And yeah, we can't wait until the day like when we can all fly, like the, care you said futures or the PPMD coverage in our wheelchairs, because like there's so many people at DMD that just physically can't go to these conferences, and they're definitely missed.
Yes, the fear of what might happen is, I know it's huge. I know it's huge with a lot of
Mhm.
families. And I want to point out that I know that on All Wheels Up website, you guys have a couple of videos of proposals for what it might look like when we have chairs just getting locked in on planes rather than us having to deal with all these extra steps. So yeah, please, I invite everybody to go on and check that out and see the great work that you guys are doing. And once again, thank you so much, Alan, for the work that you're doing to help us all, all advocate for this disease and for just our rights and accessibility. So thank you for that. And I think too that you're pointing out a really good thing, that we're coming a long way. And it's a really good celebration for us to see that things are getting better and it's happening pretty quick. So thank you for your help with that.
Yeah, and there are several designs out there that like they're really close, and there's some really great ones, like the one from Delta Flight Products, like they went viral like last year, and they say it could be certified and in planes by the end of next year, and
That's awesome.
that's just one of many signs.
Yeah, that's going to open up a lot of things for us. So that's really good for us to think about and look forward to. Thank you so much, Alan. It's been really great to meet you, and I look forward to seeing you again one day. Marissa, could you please take us away here and give us any parting words if you have anything? And we appreciate your time. I know that you did a lot of research and preparation for this, and it really helped this conversation move. I agree. I think we could fill a whole nother Ask Me Anything with more tips on this. So I think there's so much, and we appreciate all your help.
Thanks, Leslie. I think, well, my research is all lived experience. And I think that's what I want to say is that, we've learned this by doing, we've learned it by asking a lot of questions. And I think the thing that's for me the most valuable is just to approach travel with the mindset that people really want to help. They really, really do want to help. 99% of the people, their intent is not to give us a hard time. It's not to make things difficult. They just don't know our life, and they don't know our needs. And after I met with a group of pilots one time that took us to Hawaii, they mid-flight, the flight attendant came back and he handed me a note in an envelope, and it was signed by all the pilots. And they just said, "We want to thank you for teaching us so much today. We're taking great care of the wheelchair. We've already radioed ahead, and we've all learned so much, and we have a better understanding now." And I think that, sometimes we get a little tired of that, but it's just a part of what we do. And then the one thing I'll tell you guys is I think there's a few things that go a long way with the people who help you with your baggage, who transfer you into your seat. They accept tips. I always have $5 bills ready, and Joseph has them in his own hand. He does all the communicating with everybody about how to lift him and what he needs, and he gives them tips. Express gratitude, and we like to hug people. So we're always hugging the baggage handlers and the pilots and the flight crew. And that's where all those pictures of joy and love come from, is just treating it like we're gonna go out and we're gonna make a whole bunch of new friends and teach them what it's like to be Joseph.
Yeah, and you know
Goes a
what?
long way.
We're different, but once we give hugs and smiles and make friends, then we don't feel so different. We feel like we have people with us, and that's a really different feeling than feeling alone and different. So that is such a good lesson. I'm gonna go out there and start hugging people more. That's great. Thank you all so much. Cheryl, do you have anything closing that you would like to say?
I want to say, I remember Marissa saying that you should do all things with love, right? Was that
That's right.
what you had said to me before? And that to look at what could go right instead of what could go wrong. Those were some really wise words for me. I appreciate all of this. I've actually learned so much. I do have to say, thankfully, Jake's never had an issue with his wheelchair yet. I almost hate to say that, but we haven't had any issues yet. And we've met a lot of great people along the way too. And I know it's at 2:30. I appreciate everybody hanging out and
I know.
helping us go through our technical difficulties. Please reach out to cares@cureduchenne.org if there's any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. And just so all of our panelists know, there's a lot of thankful folks on this that said, thank you for all the great information. So we not only appreciate you, but as does everyone else. And this will be up on our website and on Facebook. Hopefully by the end of the day, we'll see how that goes. But again,
That's true. And so for people watching it, this is an early day one, but it is going to be to where it's recorded, it's going to be posted. So it's going to be easy to share with anybody. If you know that someone needs this message or has a trip coming up or has had questions, please share this with them so that more people get it. But yeah, that's true. We really do appreciate it staying over. And this has been a great conversation. I'm going to be more well-armed for 2 weeks from now. And don't forget St. Christopher if you need the extra help, if you need the boost.
the extra lift. The extra lift. And I want to say thank you to Lexi, who's been in our background, helping me through a lot of these technical, very, very kindly, I might say. So Lexi, we appreciate you so much.
We do.
All right.
If it weren't for Lexi, we never would have actually started. We would have still been in practice mode.
We'd still be practicing. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you everybody so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.